Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be comparing the Pilot Frixion pens to the UniBall RE or the UniBall Erasable pens. So to start off with some basic information, this is the full collection of the 0.5 for the UniBall Erasable and the Pilot Frixion pens. They are available in a complete pack for the 0.5 width of the point, and the UniBall RE only has 8 colors, whereas the Pilot Frixion has 10 colors. So I'm gonna go ahead and use them side by side so that we can compare both the colors of each of the different brands as well as how well they both erase. So the UniBall Erasables are available both on Amazon and at jetpens.com. They run about $15 for the pack. The Pilot Frixion runs about $30, so $24 in JetPens and about $30 on Amazon for this pack. It makes a little bit of sense, the price differential, given that you get 2 extra pens with the Frixion brand. Today I'm using a Rhodia dot grid pad to test out the pens. To tell, there are some slight differences in how these two pens write. To me, the Pilot Frixion is a smoother pen. I feel like there's less skipping, even though there's not a lot of skipping here with the UniBall Erasable pen. I do see some differences in the intensity of the ink. So sometimes the ink is a little bit lighter over here and a little bit darker. Now it could just be that these are new pens. I did prime each of the pens before I recorded, so I took off the small wax that was on the top of the pen tip, and I went ahead and I wrote with them just to get the ink started, which is pretty typical of all pens. I have to do that with my Frixions as well. So it may be some residual of that. If we look at just the very end of the words, it does look like it's a lot smoother. These pens, the Frixion pens, have also been used for quite some time compared to the UniBall pens, which I just received. But even when you look at the ends, it seems like the Frixion is a little bit thicker, even though they're both 0.5. And it also seems like the colors are just a little bit more vibrant. So I hope the camera is picking up some of those differences just in the color, and clearly there's also more color variety in the Frixions. So I'm gonna go ahead and see how they erase. I'm going to use the UniBall eraser. Now the top of the pen, which is where you actually click to bring out the pen point, is also where the eraser is for this pen, and each of the erasers has this little plastic cap that is covered, and it's used, keeps the eraser protected. So I'm going to go ahead and try to erase with that, and I'm also going to be using the Frixion pen to erase the Frixion side. So this one extends and retracts a little bit differently. It's here with the clip side, So here we have the extension and the retraction, and the eraser here is unprotected or kind of free. This is the 0.5, so the eraser is white. If you have the 0.7, they also have this in a thicker nib. If you use that one, then the top is the same color as the ink inside. So I'm gonna go ahead and use both of these erasers and see how they erase. So as you can see, both of them erased pretty well. I'm gonna bring it up to see if there's any kind of remaining ghosting that you might see here. So with both of these pens, you do see the outline of the original markings. The camera is not really picking it up too much, but if you look at the paper, there is a little bit of an indentation, and that might be because of the paper that I'm using. This is a very soft paper, so I can see where I did the original kind of scratch with the pen as I was writing, but it seems like the Frixion is completely erased. The UniBall has also erased well. I would say not as completely. So with the Frixion, I can see a little bit of like a gray outline of the letters, whereas with the UniBall, I can still see some of the color in the erased letters. Let's see if you can pick that up there. Oh, the camera's picking up a little bit of the gray here, and maybe a little bit of the green right there for that N. In terms of the amount of pressure it took to erase them, I used about the same pressure. I had to go over this side twice, but I did go back and forth on this side my first go around, so it's probably about the same amount of pressure. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the page to see how much damage we did to the page. So if you're using very thin or very sensitive paper, so when I use my Frixion and my Tomoe River paper, for example, and I erase, it does leave a heavy indentation just because of the rubbing. So as you can see here, it took a little bit more rubbing. So the Frixion, you can see that I put a little bit more pressure there across as I was erasing, because you can see how I have kind of damaged a little bit of the paper on the opposite end. And here it looks like I didn't have to put as much pressure on it. So maybe I didn't put enough pressure to fully erase the UniBalls, but you can see here that they both do leave a little bit of, I would say, an indentation in the paper, at least this Rhodia paper. So overall, I think both of these pens performed pretty well. I tend to prefer the Frixion pens for two reasons. So first, I like vibrant color. I like to be able to erase completely and fully, and I also like the increased color variety. The Frixions also come in 0.38 and 0.7, so if you want a thinner nib or a thicker nib, you could get the smaller ones or the larger ones, whereas the UniBall are just out in the 0.5, or at least those are the only ones that I've been able to locate. There is a price difference, so the Frixions are a little bit more expensive than the UniBalls. I also write in black a lot, so I do feel like there is a pretty consistent difference. So I used the black UniBall all day in work last week, or at work last week, and I did notice that it came off as more of a charcoal gray than a true black. And the Frixion pen also, especially if you're using the 0.38, it could come across as a charcoal gray rather than a true black. But I feel like the Frixion is a little bit darker, and I prefer that for my work notes, which I take primarily in black. And then I use a lot of the colored pencils, or the colored pens rather, in my planning, so I want to have the most variety possible. So for now, I think I will be sticking with my Pilot Frixion pens for everyday use, but I am happy that I got to try out the UniBalls and kind of a different brand. So thanks to my husband, because he's always like looking around and finding new things for me to try and explore. These are nice. I would definitely still use them. I just don't think that I would probably purchase another pack, whereas my Pilot Frictions, I continuously get refills because it really is my favorite pen, and pretty much the pen that myself and my husband use all the time. All right, that's it for today, guys. Until next time, I hope this video brought you some utility and joy.